Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Art Lessons with Rossi. Today we're going to be talking about skin tones. So I am working on a portrait of my mom and my nephew. And I've created a gridded version of this drawing, put it on my canvas, and then used Payne's Gray and Titan Buff to create this underpainting in blue. And I want to now glaze on all of the skin tones and match them to what I see in the skin tones in my picture. But how do we mix skin tones? This session, this class, will be all about how to mix different kinds of skin tones so they you can use them where it's appropriate. For example, the color of her forehead versus the color in the shadows of her face or in the shadows of the neck. Those are all going to be different colored skin tones. And it's nice to understand how you can create a range of skin tones from someone that is very pale and Caucasian to someone that's going to be much darker and like a chocolate complexion, someone that might be from Africa or an African American skin tone. So we're going to use a really limited palette to create skin tones, and it's really based on the Zoran palette. And the Zoran palette uses white, black, red, and yellow. And I don't actually use like a true black in my painting classes. So instead, we're going to be using titanium white, Payne's Gray instead of black, yellow ochre, or a warm yellow like this Hansa yellow medium. And we're going to use a warm red rather than a cool red like magenta. And the yellows, you can choose either one. You can work with one or the other. In our class, we don't have yellow ochre, but I want to show you guys the difference between those. So I'm going to be mixing skin tones with both, just so we can see the difference. And then I'm going to make myself a little color chart here. After I mix each color, I'll put it on the chart and kind of label it for myself so that I can remember how I made it and that I can make it again. So let's get started. Let's start by putting these colors onto our palette. This is just palette paper, and this is canvas paper that I've put on this side for this painting. So there's a lot of variation between skin tones, and so we really want to figure out how to mix them and therefore be able to make the color that we're looking for any kind of nationality or challenge that might happen. And again, even if you have someone that's really pale, you still need a variation in those skin tones so that you can get shadows, highlights, and there's just differences in the face of where the face gets cooler, where the face gets warmer. And so understanding how you can mix different skin tones will allow you to not just make tints and shades of the same color, but rather make the color that you actually want. So again, really limited palette here. So the other kind of trick with all of this is that we're going to be mixing colors by combining three. So I'll either use the yellow ochre or the yellow medium, but not both. Instead I'll make one or the other. I'm going to mix the color first and then add white to see the differences. And let's start with the base. To make each skin tone, we will start with the majority of the color being one of these, and we'll start with it as a base. So for example, we'll start with yellow first and add red and Payne's Gray. And then the next time, we'll actually start with the red first and then add yellow and Payne's Gray. And I talk about mixing color as being similar to cooking. That it matters which order you do things in. So if your base is yellow, it's going to turn out different, not only in the ratio, but honestly, which color you add to which other color, depending, it can change how your color looks. So as you're mixing, really kind of think about that, or we're going to experiment and try a couple things to see that those differences. Okay, so I have my yellow, so I'm going to just take a tiny bit of red and mix it in there. And I want to mix my color fully before I add anything to it. So this video is going to be a lot of color mixing, so you can kind of joke that you're watching paint dry, but it is a little bit of that. I'll grab another palette knife and just scrape it off so that I'm not wasting a bunch of my color. And then since I'm switching in between colors, I'm just going to wipe it off in between each time on the paper towel. So this is with the yellow, with the medium yellow, and let's just take a little bit of red, mix it into the yellow ochre. So the red and the medium yellow, that orange, it's probably too bright to be a skin tone for anybody. But this color, already with the yellow ochre, maybe that might actually be a part of a skin tone. It's not quite believable yet. It's quite kind of like a terracotta orange, not quite that red, but it's still pretty red. So now that we've created those two, just to see what the difference is if we're using different, start with a different kind of yellow base, let's just take a little bit of Payne's Gray and mix that in both of them. And you want to mix your colors fully. So now that's starting to look like a flesh tone. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the one next to it. A little bit of Payne's Gray in there. Playing with my light just a little bit. That is starting to look actually really interesting in terms of a color. So I'm going to just paint these on my little sheet here so that I can see what I have. Because even if it's on the palette, sometimes it's hard to tell what that color is actually going to end up like. So I'm going to just make myself a little swatch here. And then I will label them. And what's actually really interesting about the color I just mixed is how much that color looks like yellow ochre in terms of a color itself. So you're ever looking for a yellow ochre and you can't find it, or you just ran out and you want to mix them, you can always use a little bit of medium yellow, add some red and Payne's gray in there, and all of a sudden you're going to get to a color that's pretty close. I think this is when we started with this is the one we started with the yellow ochre. And now let's take that color, and since I still have it on my palette knife, I want to start adding white to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of white, mix it in there, see how that changes. And I'm going to put that on my little piece here. See how that white color has affected that. It's a really nice flesh tone. And then I'm just going to take a little more white, and I'm going to add more white in here to just see what that color ends up like. I think for the next one, I'm going to just make my base just a little more paint so that I have a little bit more paint to spread around. Just cleaning off my brush on a paper towel. And let's take this, see what that looks like. And so now that's a really Caucasian, skin tone. And it actually would work quite well for my mom in her coloration. You can see a lot of those three in her skin. And so now let's wipe this off again and add a little bit of white in the one next to it. So again, I'm just adding a little bit first and then adding a little bit more. So I have to say that this feels just a little bit too, well, I'll just keep it, and maybe I'll make one more swatch where I add a little more red in there. This feels a little too yellow for me. I feel like we didn't quite get to like a true skin tone that I would think we would actually use. But let's just make it one shade lighter. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of red in there, see if that makes a difference. So that's with a little more white. I'm just going to take a little red and just see how that changes this color. And I'm just going to keep adding to my little paint swatch here, and I'll label them so that I can remember how I mixed it. There we go. Well, that's getting to something that I think I could actually use. And it's okay to do that. Like this is a lot. There's a lot of experimentation in this, so it's okay if you keep experimenting. I feel like that's starting to be a flesh tone that I would actually use. And let's actually add a little bit more white in there as well. See what that would be like. Right. Yep. So that's looking really nice. And maybe on this one, Let's see what happens if we add just a little more white. I just wonder if we can't actually get a little bit more out of that. That would even be really nice too. So that color will just be a hint inside of that white, but sometimes in a highlight, you really need something that's quite pale. There we go. So you can see, for example, again, with this example of my mother, how a lot of those, like maybe these two and these would actually be very much a part of her face. Okay, so let's go with another color as the base. So we're going to start with the red first. And then basically we're going to add slightly different ratios of the color, making it different. I'm going to actually take quite a bit of it. I felt like I didn't let myself start with a lot. And I'm going to play with the two yellows again. So I'm going to start both of these and then see how the yellow is going to make a difference. See if I can take as much of my paint with my knife. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the medium yellow and add it to this one. And as you can see, because we have more red than yellow, then that color is going to be a little different than the first color we mixed. Actually want it to be a little bit more orange. Maybe even a little bit more than that. And then let's do the yellow ochre. Maybe a little too much there, but let's see what happens. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray in each one. And I'm just trying to get my color to fully combine. I'm getting a nice brown. I'm going to go just a little darker. Yeah, I like that color. I'm going to do the same thing with the red and yellow ochre. Okay. And I'm going to paint both of these on. See the difference on the paper. That's a nice color. And then this one as well. They're very similar to each other. One's just slightly different than the other. And part of the way we're going to really start to see that difference is when we start to add white. So that white is going to bring out the difference between these colors. So then by making tints of these, we really kind of like grow the family of, like, the skin color family that these are going to be in. And I'm just going to keep going with this one and add a little bit more white. So those first two that we put down would be really nice for like a skin tone that's in the shadows. And then maybe this one would be good for like a blush, like something on the cheeks. And let's just keep going. So then this one, again, just a little bit lighter. Goes really good too. And then let's go really much lighter. And I might need to grab some more titanium white. Oh, it's looking good. And then I just feel like I can keep going. So let's do it. And with all these, again, you can get them as light or keep them as dark as you want. And we can always go darker with these colors too, by adding more Payne's Gray, for example. But as you can see, that's starting to be a really nice range in terms of a flesh tone. And we probably could have gone even further with that one. I almost wonder if maybe I will here in a second. After I've gone a little bit more, I'm going to add some more titanium white. I'll put it there so it's not getting mixed in with the other color that I kind of got inside of my white. Wipe off my palette knife. I'm going to grab the rest of this and start putting it in here. And again, we should be able to start to see kind of the differences between these two, like starting with these two yellows, and how that does make a difference in terms of the color that you're going to get and the tints and tones of that color that you're going to get. So this one is a little bit more lavender. A little bit lighter than that. And let's go with something lighter. I might have missed or skipped a couple of colors that I probably could have gotten there in between. You can really see the difference between starting with those two different colors. And even though they look so similar at the beginning, they end up looking quite different as you mix them. Okay, and so let's do the third one. Let's start with Payne's Gray and then add colors from there. And I'm going to take this and again separate it out and see what's going to happen with those two yellows. And of course, like you can think about how it would be different with a different red. So like you can do that too, but a pretty limited palette is kind of ideal for this. So let's see, what should we do first? Let's add in the red first, kind of going in like slightly different order here, making these basically violets first, and then we'll add yellow. So red. So this is Payne's Gray and the red light. So we're basically making a violet first. We're going to make two, because we're going to make two different color. We're going to use the yellow on top, so these are going to be basically the same, or should end up being almost exactly the same. I may have grabbed something that was here on the side, so it might end up being just a tiny bit different, because I may have gotten some of this color that was on my palette inside of this one. I may have also put a little bit more red in this one than I did in the last one, which is fine. I'm just going to show us two different colors. And then let's do the yellow in this one. So what I'm starting to get is a brown. It's a little bit on the green side. A little more olive. And then let's take this one. A little more Payne's Gray in there. I felt like it got a little light, and I'm kind of missing the color that I was looking for to start with. So I'm just going to add a little bit more Payne's Gray in there. See if I can get it back to the color I wanted it to be, which usually turns into a really nice chocolate brown. It's better. Going to just add a little bit more yellow ochre. All right, so let's test it out on the paper and see what they actually look like. It's really hard to see sometimes. I'm going to start here on the bottom just because I kind of ran out of space. So again, this one has a green tint to it. And you know, kind of messing up my chart here, but I think I'm going to go this way. So I'm going to put both colors one above the other, and I'm going to put white next to them just so I have a little bit of room. So this one is really purple. I was really hoping for a chocolate brown. I'm going to try it one more time because I think that something got in my paint and it kind of didn't get the color that I wanted. So I want to try it one more time, see if I can get to that chocolate brown I was looking for. So now we have a nice violet. So let's see. Adding a little more yellow ochre there. And I want to put a little more yellow ochre in this. And again, I'm chasing a color. So this is don't give up. Like if you just keep mixing, see if you find the color that you're actually looking for. It's okay if you have some setbacks. It's okay if you don't get it the first time. Try again. And it is like getting something to be your taste. And sometimes you got to sprinkle a little bit of this, a little bit of that, in order to get to the color that you're searching for. It's getting closer. It's definitely more brown. It's more brown than the color I had before, which felt and looked so violet. I feel like that color up here needs more yellow. So let's see what this one looks like on the page. Yeah, it's much better in terms of a brown. So I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow in that one, and then I'm going to start adding white. That's better. Okay, so let's start adding a little bit of white. May have added a little too much white there. So I feel like I skipped a step in between those colors. That ends up with a beautiful gray. Not quite a skin tone. I feel like I missed a couple colors in between there. And I might remix it. Let's see how this one works because I have quite a bit more paint here than I did with the other two. Just one like that. We can go a little bit lighter. There's another one. It's really nice. And just to kind of wish I would have turned my little swatch paper the other direction so that you can really see the differences between these and like this one, for example, and how they really are quite different from each other. They could look similar, but they're not. And then let's see if I can mix this one. So what I feel like I'm missing are some more olive hues. And the olive hues come from this mixture. So I definitely feel like I'm just missing a couple of colors there that would be nice to have as an option. I think I'm going to just try to remix it really quick. Let's see what this one's like. It's actually really similar to the last one. And then let's see if I can do that one again and get some more olive tones. And to do that, I just need some more paint. So I need a little bit more Payne's Gray. So I'm going to grab Payne's Gray again. I'm going to grab a little bit of red. I'm going to remix that color. It's going to have a little bit of white in it. That's okay. It's going to bring out that violet. You can see how much that white makes a difference. Or maybe you can see, I know I can see it. Sometimes the camera doesn't pick up all the nuance. And then let's go with the yellow again. It's going to make it look a little greenish because the Payne's Gray really does take the place of blue. So then that's that next color that I was hoping we would get, which is actually like basically replacing that gray one right here. And now I'm actually going to add a little more yellow, I think. Let's see what happens. May have overdone it. Sometimes you want some olive tones in certain kinds of skin. So here's something that's a little bit more olive, and then let's add some white. And just remember, I know I keep saying this, but you got to mix your color all the way. Sometimes it will just like look really like wrong, like the wrong color, until you fully mix it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, that looks different than what I thought it would. So here's a little bit of that more olive color. Let's add a little more white. And if that's not fleshy enough, then you might need to add a little bit of red. You might need to add a little bit of yellow, just depending. So let's try in both directions and just see what happens. So this is with a little bit of yellow. Let's add some more red in there. Here it is with a little bit more red in it. So you can see that that could actually be a really nice color. Again, skin tone. And since now I'm kind of experimenting, what happens if I tint it a little more blue? And by blue, I mean Payne's Gray. It just takes the place of blue. So sometimes I say that. So my little color chart kind of went all over the place, but I really do think that the there's a really nice range of different kinds of skin tones. You can actually go further with these. Let's start with the Payne's Gray and get an even nicer chocolate brown, and yeah, just keep mixing and experimenting and see if you can get to the skin tones that you want.